Hello everyone, welcome back. So in this video, I want to talk about lighting and checking out your scene, making sure it's optimized at its best, if you will. So I have changed the time of day to this beautiful sunset, and then inside of my building here, I also have some spotlights set up. The spotlights are kind of lighting up my sculptures here. And I need to build some more lights in here because it looks like I need to fill out the space a little bit more. The paintings aren't really well lit, that kind of stuff. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. So the first thing I wanted to show you is how to change the time of day. So we'll search up here for our directional light. Okay, and then I'll hit F to zoom in on it. And F again, I can kind of rotate and hit F a couple times. And then I'm going to hit the space bar to change it to rotate. And if I rotate, you can see the sun goes up and down. Let me see, it's right over there. Sun goes up, sun goes down, sun goes up. And the shadows are accordingly modified. So, yeah, I'm going to keep mine at more of like a dusky kind of time. Like that. I kind of like the, let me actually back out a little bit. I want to see the sun slightly though. Yeah, just kind of like over there in the clouds. Perfect. Because that'll give some nice shadows. And I might even kind of change the, where it's placed in the sky. Like if you see, I can kind of create a sunset. Like how is the feng shui of the room, right? Okay, I think that's probably good. So that's the directional light. And then, yeah, just like we did in Blender, if you were using Blender, I'm going to just bring in some... actually, you know what? These lights are kind of too harsh on here. And it's giving me a little issues. So let me rotate it, see how it looks inside. Yeah, that's better. I just want to leave the light out of the room because the shadows off the skylights are a little intense for my taste. Okay, so spotlights have several parameters. Let's go ahead and click right here, go to lights, and you just grab a spotlight. I'll just drag and drop it into the scene here, and then hit F to zoom in on it. And then spacebar to move it around. Spacebar again, I can kind of change the direction. Spacebar again, I'll move it down some. Okay, so the spotlights have a cone, an interior cone, and all kinds of different things that you can manipulate over here on the right. So intensity, I can bring up or down the intensity, right? So I don't necessarily want it to be like crazy bright, so I'm going to do 0.75 here. The attenuation radius is the how actually far this thing casts. So I'm going to make it a little bit, I'm going to make it far enough to hit the ground basically, but not too, I don't need it to like go all the way outside the building. And then, yeah, so there's the attenuation radius, there's the outer cone radius, and an inner cone will give you like a hot spot. And I don't want that with this. I want this to be like more of a soft light. Outer cone is like, I can make it narrow or wider based on that. And another thing about lights is you want to kind of try not to have them overlap each other too much. And I'll show you why in a minute here. So once you get it kind of dialed in, like the actual brightness and everything, that just how you want it to be, I might pull this back a little bit. And I really focus a lot on my first light, getting it dialed in, and then I can copy and paste them and just use that same lighting to light the rest of the scene. Okay. Doesn't it seem like that cone is... Yeah, the inner cone. I want it zero inner cone. Okay. So once you get that kind of dialed in, and then you can play with all kinds of stuff. I can change the temperature of it. I can make, like funky lights, whatever, warmth, coolness, whatever you want. Temperature wise, indirect shadow intensity, like how dark that shadow that it's casting is going to be, that doesn't really matter for now. Some of these things, if you play with them, they become expensive, like where basically it takes a lot of graphics to process. But I'm all right with most of the default settings here. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And then also, I always set my lights to movable. We're using real-time rendering of lumen, and with lumen, it likes to have the lights be movable. Great. So that's a spotlight. Other kinds of lights you can use as well are like rectangular lights are pretty good too. Hit spacebar. They're pretty good because they actually light up a lot of space. Ooh. I should turn my snappy on. Negative 90 there. So they cover a lot of space, which is nice. But when we start getting a lot of light that overlaps, your light complexity goes through the roof, which can cause issues with your graphics processing. So we can check that by using a visual style here, going to light complexity here. And you want to keep everything as much in the green as possible, right? So we do have some stuff in the orange, which is okay. You know, orange is not red. You don't want like white or like, you know, so like keeping it on this side of the bar is kind of ideal. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep switching back and forth out of this mode as I'm adding light so that I can ensure that I'm not overdoing it. All right, and I'm going to actually change some things about the rectangle light here. Attenuation radius is that radius around it. You can see how it affects the influence. I'm going to change the source width, which gives me a longer light, but it tends to actually give me like these artifacts. So I'm going to leave it relatively small and just copy it over a couple of times. So, the barn door effect is actually like how it directs the light, like imagining that it's in some sort of like a box or something. I'm going to leave it completely flat though. Okay. So I'll just add a couple more of those. Control. Okay, so once you kind of get lights figured out with their intensity that you want, you can start to just copy and paste them, right? So I like to do that from a top view. So I'll switch up here from perspective to top, and then I'll right click to kind of pan around here. And I'll find my light right here, and I'll go Control C, Control V, and kind of just move them in space here. Control C, Control V. And I see that the attenuation radius is actually a little bit higher than it needs to be, right? Because you can see it's going through the wall there, and that's really not quite necessary. So I'll change the attenuation radius, bring it back in a little bit. And I should have done that on all of them. Let me just select that one, shift and select this one, and select this one. Attenuation radius, bring it back to like 600. And then let's switch into perspective just to make sure that it looks okay. This last light over here needs to actually be a little closer. Okay. Yeah, looks good. So I'll just keep tweaking with those, and you know, I've got I've actually do have like a little bit more of a of the inner cone on my sculptures here, so that those are lit up better. But yeah, so that's kind of the basics of lighting. Just make sure that you're trying to keep your lights movable, and also check your light complexity out. Make sure that we're in the blue and the green and the orange if we have to be. Basically, that's just where light overlaps. It becomes more complex. Okay, so that's lighting. And I'm just going to real quickly finish out my lighting, and I'll be right back to talk about post-process volumes. So in 1 second. Okay, we're back, and I've got all of my lights on in the scene, but it's still a little bit too dark in here for my taste. And adding more lights is only going to make things more complex. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add what we call a post-process volume. So I've already got one in my scene. I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. Okay, so this is what it looks like without the post-process volume. A little blown out. You got your own. We've got some issues with the overall intensity of things. So with the post-process volume off, I'm going to go over to my directional light here, and I'm going to change the intensity to 60, maybe 40. Okay. So I want the light to be as neutral as possible when I start to play with the post-process volume in here. So I'm going to add a post-process volume, and I can do that by looking under volumes here, or all classes I can start to type. And that's a good, just a trick to be able to grab things quickly. So I'll grab a post-process volume and put it into the scene. And with the post-process volume selected here, I've got my details panel here. I'm going to look for infinite extents. So infinite extents basically means that it controls the entire scene. Okay, I'm going to close off infinite extents, and then we're going to look at what the post-process volume has to offer. So it's going to create the atmospherics and kind of the exposure and all of that kind of stuff for my scene. I do not want to use any bloom. I'm going to turn on auto exposure histogram, and I'm going to lower the exposure. I can see I can change the exposure. Maybe I'll do 0.75. Okay. Change the exposure there. Local exposure. How contrasty your shadows are. Like the sharpness of detail in the scene. So these local exposure settings are kind of a good place to play to get the scene to look the way you want. Okay. I can do some white balance stuff as well here. I wanted to make it like warmer inside, which I kind of like that. Yeah. Tint. Ooh. We'll leave that at 0. Global saturation. Yeah. Midtones. Contrast. So yeah, there's all kinds of fun stuff. Okay, and then of course under global illumination, we want to make sure lumen is selected. And then under advanced, we've got reflection method, lumens, good, quality. We'll just leave all that default for now. When we play with VR, we might switch around some of that stuff just because we don't want to use the full capabilities of Lumen. We want to kind of lower things slightly so that we don't have processing issues. All right, but I'm thinking this is starting to look pretty good. I might want to change the intensity of my lights and then change the exposure a little bit more to fill out the room so it's less like, it seems like it's dark but also just spotlit. So I want to change that a little bit. So I'm going to bring up under my windows here, I'm going to bring up my light mixer. And this is where I can select all of my lights. Oh, do I have a rectangle light in there? I don't want that. Okay, get rid of the rectangle light. Spotlights are all right here. I'm fine with those. I'm thinking, yeah, those are good. It's the last ones that I set up. These 600s here are the ones that are on my paintings. And I'm going to make those maybe 300. Okay. Oh, wait. That's the attenuation radius now. I changed the wrong thing. Make it. That's right. Intensity is what I want to change. Maybe bring it down even to 1. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to go back to my post-process volume here and go to my exposure. And I do want to make sure I'm not overexposing the outside at the same time. And then the min and max here, I might also play with these a little bit too. So the min, you can see what happens when I mess with that. And the max, just trying to fill in a little bit more light. Okay, so the last thing I want to play with is like the fogginess of the scene. So let's go to the tools or the window here and go to environmental light mixer. And you can see my exponential height fog. I can lower the density of it. And that's going to make the interior a little bit sharper, which I like. And then outside here, how do I feel about the intensity of that light? I think it's all good. All right, so I'm feeling good about the lighting here. All right, cool. So one more time, I'm going to look at my optimized light complexity here. We're all in the green, it looks like. Lovely. All right. So yeah, this is going to be really well optimized. It'll run very well on any computer. So that's what I'm looking for. And it still looks great. We got all the lumen things happening. Okay, so with all of that done, the last thing we want to talk about is maybe a couple of optimization things, right? So your player character here, if I look at this guy, is it the right height, right? Do we need a bigger character? You know, sometimes when we're designing, we don't design things to be exactly the size that we were hoping that they would be. So if you go to blueprints here, and then you go to blueprints under first person, and you go to your first person character here, there's going to be some fun things that you can play with related to the design of your character, how it moves through the space. This is it. This is your character, dude. All right. So if I click on this little capsule here, You can see where it says capsule half height. If I increase that, I believe by default it's at 90. I've already bumped mine up to 120. And that's in centimeters. So I'm making my player a little bit taller, which I feel like works better for my scene. Another thing I like to do is actually narrow the radius down, especially when you're like walking up to sculptures and stuff. This allows the viewer to get closer to the object because before you collide with it. Okay. So yeah, that's going to be kind of those last couple of settings there. I'm going to compile that and I'm going to close it. So for the basic project, this is good. I mean, we don't need to add anything else. Where I'm going to go in the future video is going to be to discuss the Quixel bridge, how to add like trees and stuff, and landscaping and that kind of thing. And then, I might get a little bit more into the blueprint and talk about like how to add audio and that kind of stuff. But if you are good with your gallery the way it is, you're ready to package here. It's got the lighting, everything is pretty well set. So I will show how to package it in the next one and also do a few more just fun things that we can kind of play with. Okay, thank you very much.